Hey, hey, hey. You are tuned in to the Pure Sound Podcast, the second episode of the Pure Sound Podcast, and we are your hosts. I'm Julian Rodriguez.
And I'm Daniel Bronstein.
And we are here today to talk about a very important topic in the world of recording and mixing. That would be guitars.
Oof, that's a good one. I like that.
But equally as important as guitars are to recording is our guest today, Sam Pura of the Panda Studios.
In Fremont, California.
Fremont.
Yeah, he's the man.
We're going to be talking with Sam in just a little bit, but first we're going to give you our thoughts on guitars and
mixing.
I
think Sam's actually finishing up some mixes as we speak.
He's going to give us a call in just a little bit, but first let's talk about what we've been up to the last couple weeks. I know it's been about, 2 weeks since the podcast dropped?
Something like that, yep.
So what have you been up to, man?
I went to Maui. I didn't work, which was great. And I went to Maui for 10 days with my girlfriend. We had an awesome time. And now I'm back. And today I was singing all day. I don't know why. I was singing on some tracks I was doing with a composer friend of mine. My throat hurts. How about you?
Same old, man.
I like that.
I've just been working on a couple bands here and there. I got the opportunity to work on this really great, I don't know what you would call them, acoustic hipster band. They're
Higuera?
Yeah, great.
They're so good.
Really good.
So good.
Really good. It kind of reminds me of that one band, Bon Iver.
Oh, Bon Iver?
Yeah, it kind of remind me of them a little bit.
Yep. It's kind of that vibe.
Kind of along those lines.
Valley is the singer. He's a homie.
That's a sweet name.
Valley.
Yeah. That's we know a lot about the Valley, huh?
The Valley.
The Valley. All right, so let's get to it, man. Let's talk about guitars.
To me, in the genres of rock and metal, especially, those are guitar driven genres, not given, driven. Yeah. And guitars are obviously the main focal point of the mix, in my opinion. They make the mix sound big. They are the beef of the song. So I think what we should talk about before Sam comes on is kind of merging our topic last week with this week, which was mixing.
Yeah.
And now we can talk about the role guitars play in a mix.
Yeah.
And how we kind of do it or whatever. So we should talk about the balance of guitars in a mix and what you can do to achieve that balance, which is always the big challenge that everyone faces. I face it every day. You face it every day. It's tough. So let's start with the basics. You want to start?
Yeah. So I feel like we should start on the outside and work our way in. Literally into the DA. Through the hands, through the guitar, in through the plugins or the amps. And then right into the DAW.
Ooh, I like that.
You know what I mean? That. So first and foremost is the performance, obviously. And you're going to hear us say that a lot, because I'm just going to keep driving that home. Without a good performance, you don't have anything.
Nah, well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Performance.
And so when you're playing rock guitars or metal guitars, you gotta really hit it, man. You gotta really dig in. And don't be shy. There's nothing I hate more than getting really conservatively played guitar DIs to your amp. Because no matter how much I slam it before it goes into the amp, it's
missing tone.
Yeah, it's literally is missing tone.
The source of tone is your hand.
Yeah.
That's where the tone starts.
Absolutely.
That is the seed which sprouts the tone.
Yeah.
That is the plant.
I like that.
The bush, the tree, whatever. That's it. Is that fair to say?
Bush. I like bush.
I like that.
Okay, so then equally as important as the performance is, even if you're performing well and you're playing on, even if you're the best guitarist in the world and you're playing on to awfully tuned strings or a poorly intonated guitar,
then it's bad.
It's going to sound terrible.
The tone is going to actually sound terrible.
Yes.
Okay.
So tune your guitars.
Yep.
Tune them every half a song, depending every few takes even. Make sure that thing is right, and And before you start the recording process, make sure your guitar's set up and you have your intonation down,
strings.
right, and new strings.
Stretch them.
Stretch the strings.
Yeah.
Those new crispy strings make, I would say, 50% of the difference in the whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, that's about it for that.
So I'm gonna go off that and say, as far as quality of the sound coming in, so buzz and hum are two things that are. I mean, I always have problems with that. I have some issues in my studio. I've taken care of the grounding, but my studio is in a very busy part of, the valley, and there's a lot of telephone wires. There's a lot of stuff. There's generators. I'm probably half a mile from the power plant, and like there's stuff that gets into your guitar pickups, and for me, there's a few things I do to stop that. And they're things everyone should pay attention to, because when you pull up like an amp preset a lot of the time. Say a lot of people are going direct. They're using an amp sim. It's got a noise gate built in. A lot of the time that distracts you. You don't notice that if you take that gate off, your guitar is actually extremely noisy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of buzz. Yeah. And that buzz actually makes your tone worse, because it's actually getting into the actual tone of the guitar.
So what do you do?
So I like to use a few different things. Mm-hmm. I mean, depending on the severity, rather than just using a noise gate, I just picked up the decimator pedal from, God, who makes that? ISP. It's freaking awesome. Amazing.
I used to use the Boss.
The noise suppressor?
Yeah, that was cool too.
It's cool, but I'll tell you why the decimator is better.
Why?
The Boss noise suppressor is just a gate. When the guitar stops playing, cuts off the signal. Uh-huh. The decimator has intelligent decay processing. So it actually has a low-pass filter that, as you hold a note, the low-pass filter comes in and takes off the high end. So it takes out the buzz, which is all in the high frequencies, so you still get the sustain without the buzz. So that's why I like that a lot. It's really good for recording. It's way better than a noise gate. Same with the Waves NS1 plugin. I like that a lot.
I use it all the time.
Yep.
We're using it on the podcast right now.
It's literally in this recording. So buzz. So watch out for the buzz. If you have buzz, check out the decimator. Check out the NS1. That's what I use. That's pretty much it.
Don't use too much, so it's not cutting off the beginnings of your playing, or
don't use too much,
or the decay of your strum outs.
Cool. So we got our guitar in. It's sounding good. The strings are new. Intonation's good. We're ready to rock. There's not a lot of buzz. We got the pedal going. We got whatever else is happening.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, assuming that it's already been going through an amp that we like, which we'll get to that. We'll
That's
talk
Sam's
about
territory.
amp. That's Sam's territory.
Yep.
We can't encroach on his ground there. But EQ and compression. Mm-hmm. I'm not very liberal with the compression.
Me neither.
Very conservative with the compression. And usually it comes in the form of the Renaissance Axe by Waves. And I just use a little bit of that. I usually use it on every rhythm guitar track. And
I do that too. I literally learned that from you.
Yeah. And it sounds great, man. It seems to add a little beef to it. And just a little mild compression. Just bring the threshold right down, so it's just kind of hitting where the frequencies, where it's kind of peaking at.
How many dB of compression do you think you're doing on it?
It depends. I mean,
like 2, 3.
Yeah.
No more than 3 probably, right?
Yeah, just very, very moderate, just so it's kind of cutting off the tops of those peaks of the really heavy chugging or picking or whatever.
It's dope because it's snappy. It's got a snappy sound.
It does.
It gives the guitars like a bite.
And I always wondered this. I think I might try this eventually. Mm-hmm. Is if you printed it on the guitars, and then brought the guitars back in as audio, would you have the great effect of the compressor without too much of the pump when the chugs hit, right?
So you're saying you would print it, then edit the guitars.
Exactly.
It's a great idea, yeah. I think about that all the time.
I might start doing that.
So there's a potential tip.
Yeah, potential tip. Try it out. And
so there's compression.
Very light. and then EQ.
Talk about it.
Taking out the low end and letting the bass be the bass of the recording.
How much low end do you take out?
It depends, man. It really depends on the guitar tone and the tuning, the range, how high or low you're tuning the guitar. But sometimes like up to like what 100, 150, around that area. Not too much higher than that.
Yeah, I definitely probably yeah.
But it should still sound a little bit beefy, you know. But like, it shouldn't have that low end rumble. Let the bass do that. That's just gonna muddy up your mix. Like that's the number one thing that's gonna muddy up your mix.
We touched on that last time.
Yeah.
Right.
And then sometimes I started dabbling with this in the recent years. I never did it before this, but taking out some of the high end too, like banding out some of the maybe down to like 13 even.
So you'll do a high pass. Do you do a really rude high pass? Like how many dB per octave? Like, is it really steep or is it gradual? Because that's always something I play with.
Yeah.
And I never know.
I tend to go pretty steep.
You'll do the Logic 48.
Was it 24 maybe?
24.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just depends. I just like to use my ear for it. I don't set any hard rules or regulations on it.
Yeah, hell no.
But yeah, that's about like taking out, you know, maybe some of the 250, something like that, notching out a little bit of those like muddy, like banding across, hearing if they have any like really annoying low rumbles that aren't being taken away with the original high pass, and yeah, that's about it for EQ.
Cool.
I don't like to go too crazy, man.
No, keep your guitar sound the guitar sound.
Yeah.
Dope. Love it. Can I talk a little bit about how I like to organize guitars in a mix session?
No, actually don't talk anymore.
All right, I'm done. All right, guys, I'm going to unplug the mic.
All right, and we're tuning out, so we're done here.
Julian's going to take the rest of this.
Just kidding. All right, go for it, man.
So I like to do usually like a few groups. So I'll do a rhythm group, which will go into an augs. I'll do a clean group, that will go into an augs. I'll do a lead group, that will go into an augs. So, and if there's acoustics, obviously acoustics.
Right.
But
organized. Look at you.
Yeah. Well, because I don't like to do a lot of individual EQ work on the guitars, which goes back to
being lazy.
No.
I'm just kidding.
I do it sometimes.
I'm just kidding.
Which goes back to being lazy. And I'm lying to everyone because I have not followed my own rule a million times. As we all have.
Right.
When there's like a deadline or like you got to do something. And if it sounds good, it sounds good. That's the rule.
Yeah.
But okay, so I think it's really tight when you can just send, you know, your guitars, they're panned.
Mm-hmm.
And their volume, you have a left and a right rhythm. You have a couple center rhythms for certain parts. They're going to a bus. On that bus, you got the EQ, you got the Renaissance axe. And then I like to put a decapitator.
Yeah.
Sound toys. Do a little distortion, which is cool. And then and that's it. And do most of the work on the bus because that way you're kind of like affecting the beef as like a whole. Like how we talked about last time, how the mix can be like a big wall of sound. This way you're taking your rhythm guitars, you're affecting them as one wall rather than, oh, on the left guitar, I'm going to do this. The right guitar, I'm going to do this. It's one big thing.
Yeah.
Same thing with the leads. And you were talking before we even got on here, we were just kind of bantering and talking about like what we like to do. And Julian was talking about the S1, the spreader, put that on the leads.
Yeah.
Spread them out a little bit. Spread those guys out. So I'll put that on the leads bus, the S1. We'll do that. And I'll high pass the leads bus more than the other buses. I'll bring it to 300.
Right.
Let the rhythms take the other part.
Oh, I have a quick question for you. This is off topic a little bit.
This is off the books.
How do you feel about having the left and right guitars be exactly identical? Because I remember back in the day. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Back in the day, it was a sin. They had to be different amps. They had to be different amps and cabs.
Because
otherwise you were shot.
And you know what? Because we grew up in a world where a band was two guitarists, one drummer, one bassist, one vocalist.
Right.
And if you broke that rule, you were not a band.
Right.
And that band recorded, each guitarist had their side, the bassist played the bass, the drummer played the drums.
Dude, I'm going to be honest.
Vocals played the vocals.
They're identical. Always.
Me
for
too.
me. Left and right. Rhythm guitars.
Yep.
They're identical now.
I agree.
Yeah.
I used to literally record a band when I was however old. Record a band. All right, this is your guitar amp. Okay, left guitarist, bring in your amp. Let's mic it up. Oh, right, left guitarist has a a 5150 with a super nice orange cab and a super crazy pedal board, and the guitarist on the right has a Marshall MG cab, MG combo, and you're like, all right, well that's your amp, so let's mic it up.
Yeah.
It's like it offsets the balance.
Absolutely.
It's a balance issue. I just ran into this issue when I was recording this band Black Sheep Wall, and we had this grandiose idea of having two insanely different rigs on each side.
Oh.
And I tried it, and it so didn't work. And I was like, fuck this, guys. We're using the same cab on each side and the same head.
Smart. Yeah.
We did use a different channel on the head we used, but it was the same rig, and it sounded so much better. It sounds more balanced. The word balance.
Yeah.
Just sounds like one big thing that way.
Yeah.
Your ears aren't like... It doesn't shift the,
Yeah, no, that answers my
image.
question. Because I always wondered, like, is it still like, do like big producers frown on this? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
so good.
So stupid, man.
I love that.
Okay.
I like that.
So we talked about busing, harmonic distortion. Now let's talk about like overall, like how people should or shouldn't approach mixing guitars, because I always get asked, and I feel like it comes down to your ear. It always comes down to your ear, man. Or when you're crafting your guitar tone,
Yeah.
And knowing what you're looking for,
Yep.
If you feel like you're struggling really hard with your guitar tone, usually, I don't want to say usually, but if you always find yourself struggling with your guitar tone, you can never like it. I feel like the problem probably isn't in the plugin. It's
your ears.
It's in your ears, and it's in your approach. So I feel like for those people, what you really need to do is you need to take a couple records that you really like and listen very, very critically to the guitars, or maybe say you're even mixing drums at that point and you can't get the drums right. But we're talking about guitars today. So if you're really listening critically to those guitars, and you're trying to figure out, okay, like what am I hearing as far as a frequency spectrum goes, and then you sit back down after you have that experience, you'll be able to dial it in a lot faster.
Yeah, and referencing mixes.
Yeah.
A being the most important thing ever, and there's a plugin that I always forget about. It's called Magic AB. I forget who uses it.
I don't have it.
I forget who makes it, not used it. Sorry. It's a plugin where you can pull in presets of your favorite mixes.
Whoa.
And you can flip back and forth with one click. It goes on your master bus. You flip back and forth between the mix you like and your mix, and you can volume match them.
Whoa. Yeah. I need that. That sounds tight.
It's really good, and it forces you to mix right. And I've talked to Grammy award-winning mixers, multiple, and almost every single one of them have told me, listen to a mix you like.
Yeah.
Quote unquote, match it.
Yeah.
Guess what? Your mix will sound nothing like that.
There's nothing unethical about it. You're
Match
not
it.
cheating. Yeah.
Yes.
Match the damn thing.
Match
man.
the damn thing.
All right, cool.
That's it. So that's our philosophies. I think we covered all the bases.
In a general sense.
Yeah. So we're not getting too crazy technical. We have not talked about miking or tracking or anything. We are going to leave that to our guest that's coming.
Yeah.
Very shortly. His name is Sam Pura. All right. So we are here with my good friend, a amazing engineer, amazing producer, owns Panda Studios in Fremont, California, Samuel Pura.
Hello. Thank you so much for being my best friend.
Of course. Thanks for being our best friend.
Yeah, man.
So I met Sam about a year ago because I recorded a project at a studio with a friend of mine. And a friend of mine, Brian Samus, who is still a friend of mine, who we make music together all the time. Me and Sam just clicked, and we've been friends ever since, engineer friends. And we always nerd out on stuff. So
sounds like your Match.com story.
Yeah, it kind of is a Match.com. Yeah, it kind of is. Ooh, Julian's jealous. Oh my God. That's insane. So yeah, just to introduce Sam a little more for those who don't know of him, who should know of him. He's produced a lot of really sick bands. He's done a story so far. He's done State Champs. He's done Basement. He's done Sam. Anything else you want to add to that?
I mean, I played in Heavy Lolo.
He played in Heavy Lolo. Yes, awesome band.
One of my old-time personal favorites.
And he has one
I
of the
appreciate
dopest
that.
studios I've ever been to, which is in Fremont, California, Panda Studios. And yeah, he's just an all-around cool dude, knowledgeable, fun. And yeah, he will be.
What a nice introduction. Look at you guys being my friend.
Was that cool?
You guys are so nice, man. I love it.
Okay, good, cool. Well, I'm just being honest. So here we go. So basically, Sam, what have you been up to in the last couple days, week, month, whatever?
Lots of mixing. Today was a mix up to a deadline moment. I was supposed to deliver a mix at like 6 p.m. and I delivered it at 10. Hopefully that works out.
What that was for Hundredth, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tight. And you recorded them at not your studio, but in Charleston, right?
Yeah, interesting process. Totally cool, no issues. Basically, Chad, the singer, he's got a super big house out in Charleston. Because it's so fucking cheap out there, you can get a huge house. But yeah, he's got a big house, so all the band-aids went out there, and I just brought my Undertone Audio preamp and just did all the DI guitar there, programmed all the drums, and then we went into a studio locally there and tracked all the drums there. So brought it back. I reamped all the DIs. I got vocals from Chad. He did all the vocals at home by himself. I sent him a preamp and an 1176 to use to track his vocals at his house. So yeah, got them all back. It took it was like over a few months, kind of making. Chad was doing his thing. I was in a bunch of other records at the time too, so we were just kind of waiting on things to find the right open time so that I could finish it up. So that happened to be this week. So we did it. It sounds great.
So, what methods do you like to use for guitars, and what kind of things did you like to use for Hundredth? I know, like you said, you reamped. What did you kind of go through? What did you use? What are your go-tos?
So, I guess I'm kind of weird in the way that I prefer to track a DI guitar first before I reamp anything, and I think it's because there's parts are changing so often, and vocal patterns are changing, and bass parts are changing, and everyone's changing their part so often all the way up until the end that it makes sense to have everything DI so that you can always just fix anything and change anything on the fly. But you kind of lose a little bit of the vibe because you don't get to play through an amp. So people have to kind of trust me and know that I know what they're going for. But for example, when I did the second Stories of Our record, we did all DI guitar, and I would make them play without an amp stem or anything and just use just the DI guitar for all the heavy stuff.
Yeah, that's insane.
Super, it feels really weird and it's super annoying at first. But what it helps you do is I'm really big about signal flow. So it really helps you, one, determine that the performance was correct, two, that the guitar is the right guitar for the riff and that it's voiced correctly and that all of its, that your riff is actually even and sounds really good on that guitar by itself. And that way, when it's totally perfect as a DI, once you throw it through any amp, it's going to be the shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's I think that's step one and the biggest key is really making sure that you get those performances right. And also because dudes, when they play through an amp and stuff, they'll kind of the amp is compensating a little bit. So they're playing a little bit lazier and they're flubbing a little parts, and even though it feels right, it doesn't sound right if you just pull it up on a DI. You know what I mean? So it really forces you to actually play the guitar correctly and get the right performance out of the guitar. So that way, you're going to get the right tone out of the amp because you're delivering it the best guitar performance, the right guitar that's going to be voiced for the guitar riff, and then everything's going to be cool from there, you know?
That's taking the long road. That's taking the more grueling method to make an end product that is truly superior, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I mean, it's ultimately it's paying attention to every single aspect of it, and it's making sure that we captured the right performance on the right guitar, and the right tuning at the right time, and that we couldn't do any better from there. So that way, once you got that one done, you can put it through any amp that you want. You know what I mean?
We
Right.
talked about intonating. We talked about new strings, which are obviously very important. We talked about tuning your guitar before every take. We talked about playing it hard, playing it right. Sam is going a step before we even talked about that. He's talking about playing the guitar not even through an amp.
Only the talented bands that should be doing that probably can hang with doing that. I bet a lot of dudes like can't hang. You know?
Yeah, it's well, I mean, it's definitely a skill where it takes like you have to be self-aware of how good you are at playing the guitar, and if you can actually, and if you like, it really forces these individuals to really sit down and redefine what playing guitar is to them. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I used to just kind of strum along and just like make noise through an amp, but now it's like your fingering has to be precise, your strumming pattern has to be consistent, you're flubbing that one note when you're switching between when you're switching chords. You actually like let's split it up and let's just do just this chord, and then have you hold it out at the end, and then we'll punch in the next chord, because each time you slide up to that chord, it makes this little sound, and that isn't a musical moment that we want to record. We want it to be the last strum of the guitar riff before the final eighth note of the downbeat. You know, like it all becomes like capturing every frame perfectly. That's kind of the way I kind of see it. You know what I mean? Every 16th, every eighth note, every quarter note, like I want to supply, basically, like I want to capture in my computer a perfect waveform that looks almost like a MIDI guitar track.
And I bet they're all better guitarists after the process, and they were coming into it too.
I was just thinking that. I'll bet it makes them like you were just saying. Sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
I'll bet it makes them rethink the way that they structure their riffs, because exactly like you said, when you have a lot of gain on your amp, you're sort of relying on your guitar amp to sort of compensate for your playing.
Yep.
And a lot of amateur bands, that's a huge thing that amateur bands do that they don't realize is actually taking away from their tone, because your tone is based off your voicings and the consistency in which you're performing your riffs, and a performance is essentially what is the backbone to your tone is what you're saying.
Yeah, another kind of good example to support that is that when I played in Heavy Lolo, our guitar player Dan, he used a 5150, but he only used it on the clean channel, and it was this type of thing where like I don't know how he made that amp sound so heavy off of like a clean channel. And it wasn't like he was like strumming hell of hard or anything. It was just like his natural tone from his hands like really pops out, and it just sounds really good. And like that's where you're forcing people to relearn how they play guitar and how to like actually play with meaning and with tone and make the guitar an instrument that sings. You know what I mean?
My question is, do you always do that, or is there a point where sometimes you deal with the band where they can't deal with that? They can't take that. Like it's just too much. Like it's not possible.
Well, I mean, that's where it goes back to the basic conversation of like, are we having a conversation of me producing this record, or am I just engineering and capturing the band? You know what I mean? Because I would never, if I was just engineering and capturing a band, I would never make someone do that. I would just be like, word, you're going to play through your amp. And like, if anything, I would pull a move where I would like run it DI, but then have the reamp in real time. So that way I could like do any little edits or clean up things and then press record after and be like, how's that sound to you? And it's playing through his amp in real time. And then I have that amp tone printed and I edited the track above it like I needed to, you know? So that's how I would do it if I was just like recording a band. But if I'm like producing the record and trying to make something amazing, it's got to be a little different than that. And I gotta pay attention to the source and make sure that I'm choosing the right I mean, it's like I think of it like, like a movie. You gotta light the scene right and stuff like that, and you gotta have the setting right before you throw your actors in there to go act in there. You know what I mean? So it's like it's really getting everything correct about the performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, assuming that now we've moved on past the performance and past the
Yeah.
DIs, now we're going into an amp. Let's talk a little like what are your go tos? Like, I know we talked a little bit before the show. We talked about Axe Effects. We talked about Kemper. You tend to be all real amps all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so I got a new cab switcher recently, which is actually pretty awesome. So it's like all my heads are plugged into it and all my cabs are plugged into it, so I can just turn a dial and I can change which head is plugged into which. So that's awesome.
Who makes that, by the way?
It's actually Ampeg. It's like the one that they use at the store at like a Guitar Center on the demo shelf. It's
Oh,
Ampeg.
wow. What the hell? That's crazy.
Mhm. The only bummer is that they don't have a load on it, so I'm going to try to modify it and put it on there so that I can just keep the amps on standby.
Wait, what do you mean a load?
So, I mean, I have to turn the amps on standby every time or turn it off to standby or whatever. Um, so that, like, it's not always on, if that makes sense. Because you can't just be supplying power to no cabinet, you know what I mean? So that's
It doesn't have, okay, it doesn't have like a sort of passive load where
Yeah.
where the electricity is not flowing back into the head because there's zero or because there's infinite resistance.
Yeah, exactly. So, so basically, yeah. So I mean, let's get into this because we nerded the fuck out on this recently. I mean, I have an assistant Miguel who's awesome, and like going through all the Kemper profiles that we've made over the years, which we'll get to the Kemper in a second. But we make profiles every single time we record a guitar amp, as Dan experienced, and so we went through and sorted all the Kemper profiles, and then basically went through every single amplifier and put a 57 on every single speaker and chose which amp sounded best through which speaker, and that's how it goes now. So basically, I have 8 amplifiers that I use. I have a 5150. I have a Marshall JMP. Then I have a Dexter, which is basically a modified JMP, quad input JMP, and it also has a clean channel on it, which is just a volume and a tone, which is awesome amp. So those are in order. That's 5150 is number 1, JMP is number 2, number 3 is the Dexter. Then number 4 is the Vox AC30, the head, not the cab.
Amazing
obviously.
amp.
Because I have all these in the control room with me. So then 5 is the Orange 8140. 6 is the Ampeg V4, which is I basically just use for bass. And then 7 is a really weird. It's a Newcomb Pathfinder that was modified into being a guitar amp. It's actually a vocal PA, but it's like a very unique, like Voxy high watt, like really like interesting bark. It's like pretty much the most unique amp that I have, and like anytime I use it on a recording, people will be like, "What amp is that on this guitar?" If it's like, "Oh, that's that blue amp," like it just sounds really unique. Like it doesn't bite too hard. It doesn't have too much of a distortion. It's not clean at all. It's like very gainy, but it's like a really weird gain. And so then last I have an Ampeg combo amp, which is a Ampeg Jet. And so I modified it so that I can just plug it into a speaker cab instead of using the speaker inside of it.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, so those are the 8 heads, and then I have 4 cabs that are set up in my ISO booth. Actually, 5 being the with the bass cab, and we'll get to the bass in a second. But basically, it's an Orange 412. Then I have a Bogner 212, which actually has Bad Cat V30s in it. I don't know the difference. I think that they're just modified somehow. I think that they just have like a different cone on it or something like that. But it's basically just a V30 modified. And then I have another cab that's a crate cab, and it has I bought it like completely unloaded on Craigslist for like $50, and just put greenback speakers in it. So it's 2 greenback speakers, and then it's actually the V30s from the Bogner cab in that cab. So those are like the 3 main ones. And so basically, like when I use any like main guitar, it goes into the Orange, just the big heavy one. And then if you have a lead guitar, it then either goes to either the Bogner or the greenback, whichever sounds better on top of the orange. And then from there, if you have like another third overdub, then it's clearly the Bogner because it's the other cab. You know what I mean? So that way, like I'll never use the same cab for guitar parts that stack on top of each other. That way they automatically have different frequency separation and are automatically just sitting better together and voicing each guitar correctly, you know?
Even if it's the same guitar, or the same amp head, just the cab stacking on top of another cab is creating a sort of isolation between the two parts that you cannot achieve by just EQ, is what you're saying.
Totally. I mean, it's two totally different sources at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's physically two different spaces, and it's also two different cabs. You know what I mean? So everything changes about it to make it actually sit a little bit better than if it would just be the same. You know? So yeah. From there, I have out in the cab as well, or in the room. We also have a Mesa 412, which I don't even really use too often. It's like everyone's favorite recording cab ever. I don't know why, because I can't make mine sound good. And people like my friend Jeff, like he was like, "Oh, just tighten up the speakers. Like that'll bring the low end back in." I'm like, really? I guess I'll open it up and try to tighten up the speakers. I don't know. That cab just doesn't sound as good as the other guys. So and then we have a bass 6x10 and then a bass combo amp in there, which is an amp peg. So basically, there's two 421s set up on. There's a 421 on the bass combo. There's a 421 on the cab there, and then at all times I have the robot sitting out there with the 57, and I have my Beyerdynamic M160 on it as well.
Hey, sorry to cut you off. Really quickly, can you explain briefly to anyone who's listening to what your robot is? Because I thought that was literally the most ingenious, most awesome, coolest, innovative invention for guitar miking.
Thank you, my man.
I want people to hear about it.
Yeah, so real quick, I'll just explain the two mics and how the robot works with both of them.
Yeah.
So it's 57 and then a Beyerdynamic M160, so that I have a 57 and a ribbon. And I use that awesome little X clip so that the 57 and ribbon are together on the same mic stand. And so I put that on the robot, which is a DIY robot that we built. It was inspired by the dude from Rammstein and then Eric Valentine. No one made it at the time. Like, no, you couldn't. If you wanted a robot, you couldn't get one. You had to make it. So now you can buy one. There's a company called Dynamite who makes them. So everyone has a robot now.
Really?
So, yeah, exactly. Everyone's got a robot now, apparently. So good for them. That's awesome. So, but basically, the point of the robot is that I just set it up directly on the middle of the speaker, just dead center of the cone, and then I have a joystick that allows it to go left, right, front, and back. So it doesn't have any 45-degree off-axis things, but realistically, I don't actually really use off-axis miking too often. And if I do, like, if I had the option on the robot, it would be nice, but it's nothing that, there's never a moment where I'm moving the microphone left, right, forward, and back where I'm just like, if I could just angle it a little bit, it would be perfect. It's like, no, I'll just move it a tiny bit to the left, and there we go. We're cool.
Yeah.
So I'm an on-axis guy. So then those two mics, the 57 and the 160, are coming back to two preamps. Used so many guitar preamps in my life. Neves, TGs. Now I'm back to the Undertone Audios. Left the Undertone Audios for a while. Went to the Cappies. I just change all the time. But
it can be a whole nother day. We can just talk about preamps with you, which we will have many more days, hopefully.
Exactly. So, but yeah, ultimately, the Undertone is my favorite preamp for guitar right now.
Yeah.
So both those come back, and so that goes into a 500 series blender where I can blend between each mic, and I can use just the 57 or just the ribbon or a little bit of both of them, and they're ready to go. And so basically, anytime I need to record a guitar or reamp a guitar, I just plug it into one of the heads, choose which cab, and put the robot there, and then move my robot, and everything is ready to go. There's no setup time. It's just ready to go at all times.
For sure. Perfect.
So that's the fun there. Also, by the way, the pedal board is then the newest edition, which is just, I have 27 pedals on a board now. And they're all coming to a true bypass looper that I built, which has, basically just a section for the boost, just a section for a phaser, just a section for a tremolo, 16 channels. So ultimately, I plug in through the board into whatever amp, and if I'm like, this part needs a little something, well, then I'll try any of the 27 pedals I need. And if it needs some gain or EQ or a gate or a whatever, it's all ready to go. It's basically if you had a plug-in folder for your guitars to fix your guitar before it goes to the amp, I have that in an analog form now.
Whoa.
And it's set up all the time. So there's no running to the other room to grab a power supply and a cable to just go ahead and plug it in. It's already ready to go. And if you do have a pedal that isn't on the board, well, I have good news for you. I have 4 external inputs, which go at various inputs of the signal flow: front, middle end, and end, so that you can plug in your pedal and or your board to that and insert it into the signal flow. No issue.
So do you ever use any pedals besides that, your standard delay and reverb? Do you ever use any like compressor pedals or like any sweet like distortion pedals? Like, do you have any like go-tos that are your favorite?
Yeah, so the go-to recently, I don't know if you guys know this guy Trey Xavier. He's from Gear Gods. He does like a bunch of like reviews online. He's just like some guy that I'm friends with on Facebook, and like I see him post, and he's a nice guy. So I was like, yo, I'm gonna build a board. I want to talk about tube screamers. What's the best tube screamer? And he was like, VFE Ice Scream. It's the best thing. Don't get anything else. That's the one. And he's totally fucking spot on. It's a great pedal, man. That's
Really?
my favorite tube screamer. It's got it's got a high pass filter and a low pass filter, which the lamest thing about a tube screamer is the second you plug into it, it's going to cut out all your low end. So then, you get a mod where then you just take the filter off and then you have too much low end. That's the beauty of a tube screamer, is that it thins things up a little bit, as opposed to making them fluffy, So this one has a adjustable filter for both high and low. And then the tone also has an EQ selector, so you can change the mid of the tone.
Really?
So it's fucking awesome. Yeah, man.
So the tone, you can actually change the midpoint of where you're boosting your tone at in the tube screamer.
Exactly, man.
Oh,
so it's
big.
It's great, man. And so that's one of the cooler pedals. And then, the only feature that's not on it, that it doesn't matter because I run it this way. I run all my boost pedals into a blender. So I can I can basically parallel compress my guitar with distortion, you know what I mean? So I can blend my dry signal back into it, so I can go tube screamer 50% as opposed to being 100% on.
That's freaking nuts. Half your tone is tube screamed, half is straight in.
Half is just straight. As you understand already, I'm a very huge, I pay a lot of attention and a lot of respect to the source, and I've worked so hard to get my DI guitar to be perfect. I don't want to just throw it 100% through a tube screamer. I want to give it maybe 80% through a tube screamer, because I want to keep a little bit of that DI shine, you know what I mean?
You work so hard on getting it to that point. Yep. You don't want to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Dude.
The blend pedal, it's important, man. So yeah, that's the basic go-to nerd stuff. And it's whatever the guitar part is, we try all the amps, and that's how it is. It's part by part, verse by verse, chorus by chorus, bridge by bridge. Yeah. Every single guitar part is a different part of the song and a different dynamic. So we try the different amps and the different speakers and make sure that they're great,
So you just talked. You were talking to us for a while about even before we got on the podcast, about your experience with Hundredth. Is there anything you did with them in this latest recording session that you haven't done before? You were telling me you did some cool stuff, or is it all the stuff that you had mentioned to us that you were just doing?
I think there is a major secret. I don't know if I'm ready to go that far.
Oh, you do not have to go that far at all. It is totally cool to withhold.
But yeah, ultimately, all I can say is that like working with a band like Hundredth, they echo my experience with like my best friend Will, who plays in Stories So Far. Those dudes will do whatever the hell I say, and they totally trust me, and we end up with a really good end result because of it, And so, like, just walking into their place and just being like, yo, man, I have just a DI, and I'm just not going to use amp sims, and we're going to record your entire breakdowns and stuff like this with just a DI guitar that I brought. You ready? You know what I mean? Like, so that's, it's pretty normal, but it's also like, it's a different experience every time pitching that to people. You know what I mean? And like, and or being like, well, whatever, we'll do whatever you want to do. Just, you know, I'm here to record you, or I'm here to produce you, and you should listen to what I'm saying so we can achieve the best possible end result. You know. So yeah, nothing really too different other than you know, it was just DI guitars, reamping at home, and trying every amp for every guitar part and making sure that was sick. You know.
Got it.
That's dope. So we've been through the performance, we've been through the DIs, we've gone into the amp now. Now we're in the DAW. Do you have any? I mean, without giving away, you know, your bread and butter, what's your general guitar mixing philosophy? Because we were talking earlier about, you know, when we get the source in there and the source is the way we want it, we don't find that there's too much mixing necessary. Like there isn't too much besides cutting a little bit here and there. Is your approach similar? Like what do you usually like to do?
I mean, my like it, when I mean, I've done so many different things with guitars. It's like, you know, single 57, 2 mics, you know, single 57, EQing the shit out of it. Just things like that where like, you know, or also, you know, I used to run a lot of compression and EQ on guitar on the way in. You know, I would put the mics through a distressor or my LA3A or my 1176 and, you know, use EQ on both mics, one EQ on the 57, one EQ on the 160 or on both of them, you know, summing both of them into one EQ, like multiple different things. And so, you know, I've had so much experience with trying to use in the box stuff to fix issues that ultimately just continued to bring me to a point where it was like, I need to get it right at the source, and using these tools isn't going to help me achieve some magic end all be all result that I was trying to achieve. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If anything, these tools in the box are going to help nudge this into an area where my complaint isn't as great. It's not going to solve it though, you know? So when it comes, like, I mean, it's like, I'll try in the box compression. Like, you know, I stay away with guitars. I stay away from like the SSL channel or the fucking or the 1176. I keep it pretty simple and use either an L1 or like maybe the RX. The RX gets pretty harsh sometimes.
Renaissance
like,
axe.
Like yeah, exactly.
We were talking about that earlier. Just using a tiny bit.
It gives it a good bite. Like if you need something to cut.
Exactly what we were saying.
But also like it's the type of bite where like it immediately sounds like a digital harsh in the box compressor, and is accenting that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so that's where I really find if I'm gonna hit any compression, I'm going to just stay between L1, where like I'm trying to keep something leveled as opposed to like change its tone, and then RX is like going to give it a little bit more presence and like say like for example if I'm mixing and the guy says, can we get that lead to cut a little bit harder in the chorus? I'm going to go to RX because it's going to fucking push it out a little bit more. You know what I mean? But I'm not using RX to like give my tone what it was missing. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's where I think a lot of the misconception is that people like will go wrenching on these plugins thinking that it's going to change the tone. But ultimately what it's going to do is help it seat inside of the mix. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna give it a nice like fucking chair. So that's kind of so basically the main go-tos in the box would be like L1, RX. Maybe I'll try something like I mean if it's going to be a part where it's like, oh, can we get like reverb and delay on this? I'm just going to instantly throw up the CLA guitar. That's it. You know what I mean? Like that's and also I had this conversation recently with my friend Ian. I don't know how weird this is, but I think maybe it's a little bit weird because no one else really does it. But I think I've never done it otherwise. Do you guys use auxes for your fucking like vocal effects and guitars? Like, will you like throw it on an aux and then just like, you know, send the reverb send and then do it that way?
I usually do hard reverbs. I don't do auxes for my reverbs.
I don't do auxes either.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Jay?
And
yeah, about the same.
Same.
Yeah, I like if I'm, and that's I think auxes are from a console signal flow of making things simple with very few channels. And I think that in the box, that's totally a different thing now. So if this one vocal needs reverb, I'm just going to put it on the track and on the insert, and I'm just going to get it right there, and then that's it. And I'm going to move on.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to send it to another aux and do a wet send and like use my mouse to adjust the send amount. Like I don't want to do that. So yeah. So basically, like if with guitars, it's like basically like you might need some reverb, you might need like some delay, you might need some vibe sometimes. I'm going to try CLA plugin immediately because it's the easy way to get there very quickly. And then if that's not working, then I'll try something else. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But ultimately, I really don't like the compressors in the CLA thing. I think that they sound really harsh and they just don't really work. So that's where I stick on like L1 and shit.
Yeah. No, that's great, dude. I mean, I think you've given us a wealth of knowledge and experience. And shared a lot with us tonight. So,
I mean, I'm down to be best friends anytime you guys want to.
Cool, man. Well, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely, man.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add, or anything that you didn't,
I mean, I think well, let's talk about. There's two things. One, Evertune. Two, pickups. What are your guys' favorite pickups?
I love the pickups that come straight in that telly, man.
Oh yeah.
What are those?
Fender noiseless.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I love those.
Yeah.
And for rock and metal, I love my JP6. What does it have? It's got the DiMarzio.
I have no idea.
The DiMarzio liquefier and the something else.
No idea.
My favorite ones. I should know the name.
I've never messed with DiMarzio. I've only messed with Duncan, which I happen to really like. I find I like their Duncan customs a lot, and or the JB. I think those work best for me. Things like EMGs just don't really work right. I don't know. I can't. I think it's because I don't come from like an XFX metal background like my boy Julian over here. But
those are
fighting words.
Those are fighting words.
It's a roast. Comedy Central roast.
Yeah, that's a roast right there.
Naturally, those guys like EMGs like kind of give this. If anything, it's the word that is our favorite word for the night. Compensate. You know what I mean? It kind of compensates for a little lack of talent in the hands there that needs to be reinforced. You know.
No, I do not like active pickups.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't accent the guitar at all. You can play a wooden plank with an active pickup and it sounds exactly the same as a some rare
$3,000, yeah.
Oh, I don't know what freaking wood they use, like rare
Koa
ash, whatever, wooden semi 1/20th hollow body guitar. It sounds the same. If you have an EMG pickup, it's just the strings going into an active pickup.
I will say though, I did with the 100th stuffer active P bass deluxe, which is like $600, like, and it's got the jazz and the P bass pickups in it, but they're active, and so that's where I was like, oh, I'm just gonna get a passive one. But fuck, man, that bass sounds really fucking goddamn good. It sounds really even, really good. It makes me want one. So yeah, but then also besides that, Evertune, dude. Evertune's the shit, dude.
Yeah.
Do you track on those all the time? You have them on your guitars?
I mean, I would love to install them on all my guitars, but it's a really, I wouldn't, ultimately I don't really want to install it on every guitar because you can't just like tune up to another tuning real quick, and just make things like easy. It's definitely a recording guitar, and it's a tool, and it's meant for capturing like a guitar that is meant to be totally in tune and flawless in terms of any which we like to call witch fingers when you bend, and so octaves are the best example of that. Any of these octave riffs, they're just never in tune because you gotta either bend your pinky a little harder to put it in tune, and or your forefinger, you know what I mean? And so and that's Evertune fixes all those things, and it saves so much goddamn time. It's amazing. I don't know how I ever recorded guitars with it. I know how I never got good guitar tones before it because things were just really out of tune and really flubby and didn't sit together really well. And they sit really together well with the Evertune now, and it's awesome. I wish I had more of them installed on other guitars so I could use other guitars without having tuning anxiety about the tuning issues that will be associated with them.
So rad. No, those are great.
Check that out.
Yeah, those I was watching some videos on those, and that's a crazy invention. Like that
It's
solves
insane.
so many issues, especially for guitarists playing heavier genres where there's a lot of bending, not bending, a lot of you're playing so hard that the strings are bending, that it compensates.
Yeah, I mean, like I think currently, like I have this beautiful Telecaster that everyone's like, man, I love that Tele. It's so beautiful. I would love to play that. It's like, yeah, but it has like tuning issues, and I'm like afraid to put an Evertune on it because it looks so beautiful. But it would solve my tuning issues if I just did it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
one of those, you got to bite the bullet.
Yeah, just go for it.
you should just go for it, man.
I mean, it's expensive, man. It's like $750 for the bridge and the installation. So you're taking a $300 Telecaster and turning it into a guitar that's worth 3 times as much. You know what I mean?
Jesus, just from the bridge.
Yeah, just from a bridge.
Damn.
Yeah. Which again, if anyone wants to pick up at a little party and tune it, drop it down to D real quick to play along with our home slice who's playing an acoustic that he brought. You can't do that. You need to get out your Allen wrench and you need to set it right. But it's like basically it's what Floyd Rose always wanted to be, you know.
Well, Sam, my man.
Sam, it's been great, buddy.
Thank you guys. I highly appreciate it. I'm sorry that it's 1 a.m. after 2 days of intense mixing and revisions, and I hope I sound enthusiastic.
Bro.
Dude, the life of a working man.
Yes.
It was great having you on. Hopefully we
Thank
can
you,
get
guys.
you back again sometime.
Absolutely, I'd love to be a frequent contributor.
Absolutely. Well, your wish is our command, man.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
You got it.
Absolute pleasure, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So that was our boy Sam Pura out of Panda Studios in Fremont, California. Done some awesome bands, stories so far, Basement, State Champs.
Hundredth.
The list goes on and on. Hundredth, which we were just talking about. Awesome dude.
So, if you want to get in touch with Sam, you can check out his Instagram at Sam Pura. Simple. Pura. Sam Pura. Plain and simple. Or you can follow his studio Instagram at the Panda Studios. And he's also got thepandastudios.com. So if you ever want to get in touch with him, you want Sam to work on your band, hit him up. So
Great dude.
that's about it for us. We're going to be trying to do this show more frequently because we're finally getting into the swing of things here on the podcast. And if you want to ask any questions at all, feel free. YouTube, SoundCloud, our Instagrams, and of course iTunes. Leave a comment, rate, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And if you want to get in touch with either myself or Dan, you can reach me, Julian, through either Instagram at Parallel Focus Studios, or come to my website, www.parallelfocusstudios.com.
And if you want to find me, I'm on Instagram as at DB Music Studios, or you can get in touch with my management or my portfolio at thegreenlitcollective.com/DB Music Studios.
So like I said, we'll be seeing you guys soon. Hopefully we will have some more sweet interviews with some more producers. And yeah, until next time.
Keep your sound pure.